in this. Got everything. Okay. All right, folks, you are listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. And I'm truly honored to have the author of Love is the Gift, Supporting Children Through Bereavement. I want to start getting emotional already. Anna Moore, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm sorry. Good afternoon to you.
Morning to you.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
Well, I mean, there's quite a lot to tell, but I think
I'm
briefly,
in. Go ahead. No,
you're in. I can lay down my whole story in one go. I suppose if we're looking on a book perspective, I am a psychotherapist counselor. I've been working with people since 2006 and have my own private practice. I work with adults. I don't work with young people or children at the moment. I've also been a youth worker and a youth program manager for over, 18 years. I worked at the Avenues Youth Project for about 14 years with an absolute incredible cohort of inspirational people working and supporting and developing young people from age 8 to 21. Informal learning and educating from inner city London youth. So really kind of working with some of the more hard to reach and economically deprived children in the area. So I think if we're looking at me as a person, I've done a lot of work with young people in the youth work setting and working with young people that come from, a lot of them coming from hard to reach and disadvantaged backgrounds and economically challenged backgrounds. And then I've got the therapy, the counselling that I do, and I work with age 18 plus. So I don't actually work with children. I kind of have them separate.
When you going into counseling, what was the drive, the motivation?
I remember ever since I was a child wanting to be a therapist or a psychologist. I really was very passionate to help people's emotional state of being. I think I most probably as a child saw a lot of adults that were struggling emotionally. And I suppose I grew up wanting to kind of take away suffering from animals, suffering from people. I just wanted to be part of doing good and making the world a better place. I think that innocence of a child to take away pain where you think it's completely unnecessary.
Do you ever thought about where that might come from? There's some people that are that don't have that same empathy or compassion, or just don't think about it, maybe more self-centered. You're the counselor, you know the words better than I. Do you ever wonder where that comes from in you, Joanna?
I'd certainly say that, my life and my experiences in life are what give me the tools to support and make a difference. And, either you are a kind of person that kind of role of work is something that fits you. So I certainly would say that my experiences of life in general, from childhood all the way through young adulthood, has formed who I am as an individual and as a person. I didn't get into the counselling career straight away. I got into it in later adulthood. So it isn't something that developed straight away. It just, the opportunity just didn't come in my path to get onto that. So I had a kind of life-changing moment where I got to the point where I was fed up with doing stuff that I didn't particularly enjoy in the sort of retail management kind of environment and industry. So I just thought, why am I not doing what I need to be doing in life and doing work that's going to give me joy and make a difference for people? So I kind of did a complete U-turn and went for youth work and counselling, and found myself in work that I value, and it impacts me greatly to make a difference in people's lives, whether it be children's life through informal education with young people, or whether it's counseling and working one-to-one with people with their most intimate thoughts and feelings. I mean, it's a complete honor to be with another human being in a really natural, present way. It's not just catch up for coffee. We're not talking about the weather. We're talking about real people's lives that they're stuck in. Specifically with the counseling, it's about talking to people that are stuck, that really need support to having a happier and healthier life.
When again, getting people to open up, I'm sure there are some. I know a few people that have counseled. One's retired, was in counseling for a decade. Knowing a few people, getting them to feel that trust, and even though they're coming obviously voluntarily, but to get them to open up has got to be a real gift, to create that safe space. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I always think that it will depend. Each human being is a very unique individual person with their own story. So some people feel comfortable straight away, and some people don't feel comfortable straight away. It takes time to develop that trust. And, if somebody really doesn't want to work on their stuff and they're not ready, the work as a therapist, it's not going to happen. It is really then having that conversation. Maybe you're not ready for this. Maybe you should come back when you are ready. Because you have to, it's about a work agreement, it's a work alliance. I can be there for you wholeheartedly, but you need to want to be here as well. You can't, you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. It has to be an agreement of two people wanting to work together through the process. It's not me, it's me and the person.
If you don't mind, I'll share a very personal experience. And this was probably, I don't know, 40. Wow, that hurts. 40 years ago, I had some memories of childhood sexual abuse were surfacing. And there was a whole movement, I know, that said that recovered memories don't exist. And the way I describe it, Joanna, is that if my grandmother was living, I went to see my grandmother, and up in the attic, I saw a box of albums, Louis' albums. I'm going through them and I see the Lemon Pipers, Green Tambourine. And what I say is, I forgot I had that. And then I start flooded with the songs where I'm singing the songs in my head. It had just been packed away. And when they start coming back, it can be challenging. I'll just say, I know you know that better. I know personal experience, not the professional, and was looking for someone to talk to. And you've got to be ready, because the first therapist I went to talk about it was, she'd make tea and we'd talk about movies, and she had a professional obligation, obviously, but I was able to distract, because at that point I just didn't, even though I was going voluntarily, it was painful, and so I didn't want to talk about it. Went to another one, and I'll never forget when I was actually a college professor, and wasn't like someone suggested. And I remember I started to tear up, and I said, I'm going to go. Okay, I'm going to go. I'll never forget. She put her chair between me and the door, her office door, got out some Kleenex, and she said, please don't. And it was wonderful. That approach was wonderful, but you got to be ready. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on about that. You've got to.
No, you do have to be ready. I mean, my heart really goes for you, because that's a really difficult, experience to, number one, go through as a child, bury it, and then it really is important about finding somebody that you feel safe, that gets you. And you're not going to gel with every single person. Not every single person is going to gel with me, and that's fine. You don't have to work with me. People should work with who works for them and how it fits. And that's really important, because that's how the work grows. And that's how the support is given, because people need to feel safe in the space that they are, and they need to feel valued. And I think safety is the most important thing, because whoever's coming for therapy is vulnerable. They're coming because it's not going to be easy, because they're coming to talk about something that's difficult, something that they've avoided, something that they've repressed, some relationship that they're struggling with. Then they're not coming to talk to you about happy occasions.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not what they're coming for.
Let me tell
They're
you the new
coming
restaurant I found, or something like that. That's not what they're coming to talk about.
a new restaurant.
Yeah, or they're not coming for, I'm saying they're not, or let me tell you my new Marmite recipe or whatever. They're coming to
Yes.
talk about something very, very difficult. I also, from again, some people that I know, it's got to be for someone like yourself that feels so deeply. I don't want to say difficult, but you're taking in all of that. You're hearing that, and that's got to be challenging also. Yeah.
I honestly, for me, it's something that I really enjoy doing. You know, I find it really an honor to be in a real intimate and real space with another human being that is got no, it's no nonsense, there's no filters, it isn't, we're not all, it's just real. We're not talking about the weather, we're not talking about making polite conversation, we're here to be real. And I think it's a wonderful experience to be part of that, and a real honor to be part of somebody's life then hopefully changing and unfolding, and good things coming, and movement and growth. That, you know, that's the value really in the work. And that's for me where I changed what I did, and say, why am I doing stuff that means nothing to me, that doesn't fill my soul up, that I don't wake up feeling good? I'm not interested about all the sort of numbers and the zeros and selling aspects of stuff. I want to do something that I feel good about. So youth work and counseling, it can be, I mean, I think youth work is usually more challenging than I would say therapy is, because therapy, I work with adults, and 95% of the time the adults are all wanting to be there and ready to be there. So you're already starting in a place of two adults coming together. Whereas when you work in a youth work setting and you've got young people, and you might have young people that come from hardship or who have experienced neglect and difficulties in life, they're coming to the youth project, you know, number one, to have fun and to relax as well. And they're also learning and growing from that experience. And the youth workers end up embodying sort of healthy parenting roles, you know, and part of being a healthy parent or having that kind of role is saying no, or you can't do that, and putting boundaries down. So what child likes to hear no? They don't, you know. So
Like adults, no one wants to hear that. Right.
like,
Right.
like adults, you know, it's like I can't do what I want to do. But it's an important part of life, and it's an important thing to maintain. And some adults and parents find that challenging. They don't like to say no, they don't like to upset. But actually, children learn so much from it. They learn how to self-regulate. They also learn that they're allowed to say no as well, you know. So it's important, but it's different, because the children sometimes in a youth work setting want to have more fun, and sometimes you're there to really support them with other areas and needs that they don't really see how important they are. So if you've got a cohort of young people that are engaging in unhealthy relationships, you know, you need to have those discussions with them about what is okay and what's not okay in healthy relationships. And if they don't have healthy relationships with their parents at home, or they don't have parents, you know, that's difficult for them. So I would always say that children are, it's different kind of work. They're both incredible, but the children can be a bit more resistant towards things sometimes, whereas when you have one-on-one therapy with somebody, the adult's actually coming, they've chosen you for a reason, and they're willing participants.
That's beautiful. And that's an interesting take on it also, about from your perspective and what you do and how satisfying it is. And I love that transition from the business world, if you will, to the heart-centered. That we need businesses, we need people to do the business end, but you to feeling fulfilled. Go ahead. You want to say?
I was just about to say, well, you know, everybody has their bills that they need to pay as well. So,
Sure.
you know, there is a reality to having to sort of like create an income in life. But, you know, if you're doing your job solely because, you know, and I've seen it damage people, really damage people. It's all about what job they've got, how high up the market they've got, falling in line with the clique, you know. And there's no happiness in there. Absolutely not an ounce of happiness. There's complete sheer misery. And it really is kind of thinking, hang on a minute, do I need all that extra cash and no joy in my life? Because life is a gift. We do not know when our number is up. It is one of those things I can definitely guarantee we're all going to die one day.
Sure.
You know, it happens. And the one thing is that none of us really know when that time is going to happen. If we're sick and we're unwell, then we know that that time might be closer. If we get older, we know that that time might be closer, but we don't really know. We don't have that information, and we cannot control it either.
When you're talking with JoannaMoore.com, Joanna P.A. Moore, MOORE.com. Of course, we've got links up. You can go directly to the site. And I appreciate how in depth you talked about that, Joanna. I know we were talking, if you don't mind, before about trying to keep on track, and that this is on track. Because now I love hearing the background of someone that wrote something so important as love is the gift, supporting children through bereavement. The inspiration, and if they go to your website, you can read about the author, about the inspiration to write Love is a Gift. Do you mind sharing that?
So there's a couple of reasons behind it. One of the inspirations was somebody very dear to me passed away, and she was like a surrogate mother, a grandmother. She was family to me. So, and she passed away. She passed away as an old lady and passed away very well, I think. So there was no sadness in the sense. There's a real sense of acceptance that actually she had a good life. And I felt very blessed to be part of that life. And she treated me like her own child, although I was not her blood. So she meant a lot to me. So the feelings and the heart of the grief, I think she was very significant in my emotions of when I was writing Love is the Gift. And since the age of, I would say between the age of 3 and 10 years old, I had already lost 4 significant family members. So I'd experienced grief as a child. So it's something that most of us have experienced or will experience at some point in our life. I mean, I know that statistically, the Childhood Bereavement Network says in the UK that it's 1 out of 20 children in the UK would have lost a parent by the time they're 16. And we're not even adding on their grandparents, we're not adding their other family members, other friends, close friend network. That's just a parent. So, you know, it's a real subject, and people are so scared to talk about death because usually I think adults haven't come to terms with death in their mind. There's such a great fear about talking about it that they're so uncomfortable to talk about it with children. And yes, it's painful. Yes, you know, we do grieve. You can't take the grief away, but it's really about the process of grief and giving space to do it in a way that is healthy so that you can heal from it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And before I kind of lose the point as well, that I also live with a life-threatening condition called Addison's disease, which is very rare. So I'm going to mention the name of my condition because I know that any Addisonian that might be listening to this might go, yes, somebody that knows the condition that I live with. And there isn't enough spoken about it. But so
And it's life-threatening. It's life-threatening.
It's life-threatening. I'm steroid dependent. So if I don't take steroids, I die. So if my medication supply, if we went to war and I couldn't get my medicine, that would be me done, basically. And I have to up steroids. So if I hurt myself or I have severe stress, I can, or if I break my leg, I can go, or fever, or anything kind of like that, chicken pox, can send me straight away to out of this world. Basically, I can die from it. So I'm high risk. I mean, hopefully I'll be around for a really long time and I'll be sticking around for a really long time. But obviously, because I live with this condition, all the other factors that wouldn't affect most people, like breaking their leg or spraining their ankle, can put me into crisis and I can die from it. So I have 2 children that, you know, I need to be honest about that. I want them to know how I feel about them. I want them to feel comfortable about talking about death with me, that this is a subject that we can talk about, because if I'm not here, then they can't have that conversation with me. And I'm constantly hearing in schools, in places, not only in the work setting of youth work and in counselling, but I'm always hearing about somebody's parent has just died of cancer, somebody's parent has died unexpectedly. They were only 47 years old and they left 4 children behind, you know, or a child passing away and the whole family and siblings unexpectedly. So these things do happen. So ignoring them doesn't make it disappear. So I think the inspiration is not only to write a book that supports people and supports children and supports the relationship between caregiver and parent and child, to have somewhere to talk about anger, sadness, whatever you might be feeling. But it's also to kind of say, hey, why aren't these books part of children's bookshelves? Why aren't they just there for us to pull down and go, okay, today we're going to talk about, you know, it doesn't have to be only about being grateful in life and being kind. Yes, those are wonderful things to offer children, you know, but let's talk about the real things. Actually, how does your child feel about death? What are their thoughts about them? Do they have fears? You know, where do those feelings go if nobody ever talks about them? It's almost easier to have that conversation before somebody's died or before somebody's got sick, so that you have the grounds to talk about it. If that makes any sense.
It makes Joanna, makes perfect sense to me. Again, something I've mentioned before on the show, maybe too many times, regular listeners will know. My father died just over 30 years ago. Again, I had a tumultuous relationship. I mean, I loved him, miss him. It was a difficult childhood. He was not the one that molested me. It was just challenging, I'll say that. Yet in grieving for him, I still remember what my mom said coming home from the hospital when he died. And he had leukemia, so he was ill for a while. She said, my dad's name was Sam. She said, Sammy and I never thought we would die. Of course, she didn't mean they thought they were immortal. Of course, that she didn't think. They never had the conversation. They just avoided it, never talked about it. And then you're left with, I don't know what. And again, that's adults. I think for kids, how important love is the gift. understanding for kids. Again, adults can go a lot of different places. Kids can't to find it. And that's what I love about your book and how it opens up. And by the way, certainly beautifully written and beautifully illustrated also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, the thing is that love is the gift won't be for everybody. It's an option. And like I said, every human being is individual and different. And the grieving experience for every human being is going to be different, whether
Sure.
depending on the relationship that you had with the person, the age that they died, how they died, there's such a pick and mix of feelings. And that's why children are the same. They're going to have a pick and mix of feelings towards people. They might be somebody that died that they didn't particularly like that much, or the last thing that they said wasn't particularly nice, and that's they're struggling with. So, and I think that's the thing, is that if the adults are not talking about it, adults are so resistant to ever talking about death, like it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
There's an assumption that you are granted to live until old age, and that's how it works. I get to retire and then I can go fishing and have a great time and read the books that I want. But that's not right. Life is a gift. It really is a gift. And, I can't I know that everywhere is banging on about live life in the moment, enjoy life, be present in life, but it's so true. Be present. I think my condition makes me grateful to be alive. I mean, it doesn't mean that I have wonderful days every single day, but it certainly makes me feel grateful to be alive, and it certainly makes it a lot easier for me to think, actually, I need to have these conversations with children, especially mine.
Especially yours. And again, but you gifted it out to the world because people can get the book. And I obviously highly recommend it, having read it. And again, beautifully illustrated, and how you focus with the kids. Obviously, it's for kids, for bereavement, but you're able to, at their level, and bring that.
I'm just, Louis, I am such a big child at heart. I am the biggest child going along. So being a youth worker,
you and I both, by the way.
being a youth worker going rock climbing, I mean, Julian McDonaldson is one of a lovely rhyme book writers for children. And I think I keep her books not only because the children love it, but because I love them as well. So I'm a complete great fan. But I think rhyme makes things softer, and this is about giving something that can be soft, that can be not scary, that can be pleasant to read through. And it might not be for everybody, because some people will say they want something a lot clearer. Obviously it's in rhyme, so that's how it flows. And depending on how people feel, I do make there is little sections in the book that talks about spirits and the heavens above, so that might not work for certain families, and I completely appreciate that. So I certainly don't go, love as the gift is for absolutely everybody. It's something that will work for a lot of people, but by all means, if it's not right for you and it doesn't fit the needs of your family and doesn't fit the needs of your children, then it's not the right book for you. And also, if you think, if you have children that are autistic and are on the spectrum, it might not be, because they will need clear language to explain things. So it certainly isn't a book for absolutely everybody. I will always encourage adults to read it first,
That's
so
great.
that they know the story, and then to read it with their children. Reflect as an adult. What does death mean to me? How do I feel about it? I'm a strong believer that children should see how we feel. They learn how to self-regulate by us showing them how we regulate ourselves. And it's not real. If we run around pretending that we don't feel or we're not sad, it's not a reality of life. Life is a pick and mix of variation of different things. So if you're going to push all your feelings to the inside of your very deepest Pandora's box of your body, you know, it will find a way out eventually. It
Sure.
always does in some
Mm,
form or another.
yeah. As I've always said, or have said for a number of years, you deal with it, whatever it is, or it will deal with you. And maybe that sounds harsh to some people, but that's how I feel. And better for you to deal with it as opposed to it pop up somewhere, somehow, behavior or whatever. I've got to say, Joanna, when I loved when you wrote on in your website on about the author, for me, love is the only true gift in this life, a gift that should be celebrated and shared. Uh, it's beautifully written. And when you talk about that and the importance, again, the importance of talking about it if you can prior to losing someone. And the fact that you focus on kids with this book is wonderful. There certainly are a lot of things written about grief, as there should be regarding adults.
There is a lot around grief
Adults.
for adults, but for children, there are books out there. I'm not saying that there are not books out there, but there isn't much because people are really scared to talk about it. They really feel so many adults haven't come to terms with where they're at with their how they feel about death until they're impacted, and shocked and suffer as a
Yeah.
result of it, and grief, there is a lot of pain in grief, and it is a very difficult road, and some of those paths are harder than others. There is, I can certainly be at peace at losing the person that I lost that was one of the inspirations, because for me, we had a good life. I feel like it can be celebrated. I feel that I can reflect back on that with joy. But, certainly for a parent to lose their child is a completely different shock and a completely different experience, because no adult goes or, you know, goes to have their children with a thought ever in their mind to think that their child will die before they do. It's not what we want. We want our children to live, to grow, to find love, to have children, and for us to go knowing that they are thriving. It gives us a sense of peace, I think.
But when people don't want to, again, as I age, in my 70th year, I have a friend, and actually someone else that I'm close with, that doesn't want to talk about death. Will say, well, this person, they'll get better. They'll get better. Not everybody's going to get better. Sadly, it's just a fact of life, and doesn't want to talk about it. We also have to consider the person that wants to talk about it. You may not want to hear it. Correct, Joanna? I've used myself as an example. If somebody was telling me that they had an illness or whatever, and it could be, like you were saying, life-threatening, with Addison's, uh, they may not want to hear you or I or whomever talk about death, but you, I, whomever want to talk about it. And I think people need to be understanding and respectful of that. Am I making any sense?
You are. I'm kind of looking at it in two ways of being free to talk about how you feel about death and being open about it. But I suppose that if you have somebody, a friend, that really doesn't want to talk about death and it's their own experience and it's about their stuff, then they have a right to
Oh,
also
sure.
say, actually, I don't want to talk about it. I think it changes it a little bit in the concept that if it's your partner, your partner, and they're dying and you're not, as a partnership, you might want to and need to talk about it. And that's really difficult because it's really about respecting the needs of the two people that might be very different. And I suppose for me, it isn't to tell people how they should live their life. They should live their life how they see it fit and how they see it right. My belief is that it is healthy to talk about it. My belief is that if we can make it a normality to talk about it, then we are better equipped to go through the process of it when it happens, that it helps in the healing process of it. You know, writing a children's book to support children for grief isn't to magically take away their pain or anybody else's. It's basically there to say, you're okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. And this is perfectly normal. And it might take time until it hurts a little bit less. You know, we don't forget the people that pass away, the ones that we didn't get along with, or the ones that we did, the people that are in our lives that impact, we remember them. That is part of our journey. It is part of a wound. You keep the scar, the wound heals. You don't take things away. You can't undo what is done. All you can do is try to live in a happy space, in a better place, to have hope again, to live and have joy again in your life. You're not there to stop somebody from suffering or thinking about the person that they've lost. I certainly don't want to forget the people that I've loved and lost along the way. I want them with me. They mean something to me.
Important to you to have that memories. Joanna, one of the things that when people say time makes it better, it doesn't make it better. Losing somebody, time isn't going to make it better. You may react to it differently. You may not break down in tears as quickly, but the things people say, and again, well-intended, well-meaning, yet we need to be thoughtful about what we say. I had a friend, when you talk about kids die, I had a friend whose son died in his, I don't know, I think early 20s. This was years ago. And when the guy in front of me at the receiving line said, I know how you feel. And I'm thinking, again, well-intended. I know he certainly he's not a friend. Didn't mean it in a bad way, but you don't know how he feels. First of all, you didn't lose a child, and even if you did, it's different for everyone. We want to comfort people. We want to say something when in fact nothing we say is going to ease that.
Sure, and it's easy for people to say the wrong thing sometimes, and they didn't mean it with bad intent, you
Certainly.
know. And you know, we're humans. I think everybody's been in that time where something's come out of their mouth, and they're kind of wishing that they could have retracted it, because they're like, that couldn't have
Right.
sounded how I meant it to sound, like, you know, and that happens. So it, it you know, we are human, we do make mistakes, we do say things, and I think sometimes it's just about, if you do make a mistake and you say the wrong thing, be accountable for it. If you realize, look, I'm really sorry, that maybe didn't sound right, or, you know, we are human, we do make mistakes.
Of course.
I don't, you know, I completely agree. You cannot change anything. You don't change your history. You do not change your past. That is part of something that you take with you. It's your experiences are part of what you go through. And I think what makes a difference is to give space to have those feelings come out, so that you don't have to hold them inside you, and you don't have to be burdened by how intense whatever feelings you have are inside you. It's never going to change what's happened, whether it's somebody that you love that you've lost, or you've had a really bad experience as a child. It doesn't take it away. It's, you know, so you can't do that. But I think, as in what people say, sometimes people say things where you think, really, did that really come out of your mouth? Like, that's not even a misslip of saying something that was helpful. That's, I've heard, I don't know whether it was from your show or from somewhere, where somebody made a comment to somebody that it was God's will, their intention that their child was taken away. And it's just, I mean, was it from your show
Well,
that I heard
yes,
that somebody?
and the woman's daughter was lured by whom she thought was her girlfriend, and she had another girlfriend, and they beat her and buried her. Uh, Buried her
Yeah,
alive. It just, and she said, "Please don't say to me, it's part of God's plan that my daughter."
yeah,
And then thinking it through, that my daughter was, that in this horrific.
yeah. I mean, when I heard that, I was like, it hurt me. I don't even know who this woman is, but it just, to think of how much suffering and pain she has gone through just to know that this is how her daughter died,
Oh,
and then somebody to say this is the will of God. It's like, to me, that is really careless, unthoughtful, and actually quite cruel. That comes
I
off quite
agree. I agree.
nasty. So, those kind of comments are the comments that really kind of sit not comfortably in my stomach. But, I think sometimes people might slip and say, I know how you feel, and that's not maybe what they're trying to say. Maybe they're trying to say, I can really see how you're hurting at the moment. And I know that pain, but how can I help you? What can I do to support you? What do you need from me? Everybody's pain is different, everybody's unique.
And it's
But
sometimes it's just to be there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joanna.
I think it's just the difference between somebody maybe saying the wrong thing but trying to be helpful, and then we can be accountable of saying, actually, that doesn't work for me. That's quite painful, because you don't know how I feel. You haven't lost a child. And the talking about child loss, the I have Sandy Peckinpah, who's written at the back of my book. She's an American author, and she's written a few books. She's also been a mentor, because I joined the art and craft of writing and publishing with Mark Allen from New World Libraries. And she's amazing. She was a mentor, and she did a book on how to survive the worst that can happen, which I've done on social media and Children's Grief Awareness Week, because
It is.
obviously, pardon?
It is now. Children's
It
grief.
is now. This is the last day of Children's Grief Awareness Week. And when there is a child grieving, there is also adults, other people grieving. There may be siblings that are grieving. There are adults grieving. So I kind of put a selection of books out, to not only about children's grief awareness, but to support the people around them, because supported adults can support children. We can't just forget about, we need to forget it. We need to remember everybody. I think that's the thing in life, is that we can't forget people. We need to remember everybody, because healthy adults that are supported can in turn support children. It's children need the support from the adults around them. That's who's there to guide them, to help them self-regulate, to support them. And Sandy Peckinpah wrote this book quite some time ago because she lost her son. So whenever I offer this book to somebody that I know, I always do it with a very sore heart, because it's somebody that's lost their child. And that's really a difficult thing to digest. So I think, Children's Grief Awareness Week, it really is about kind of making people see that not talking to children about it, they catch on. They know when something's not right. They know when people are unhappy. You cannot hide it. You cannot give the poker face. They tune into the feelings underneath. And granted, depending on how old the child is, what their needs are, you talk to them in different ways. But ignoring a situation, thinking that it makes it better, is almost like ignoring their feelings and how they're feeling. And where do they put that?
When you writing the book, and first let's talk about availability. They can go to your website and link to Amazon. Tell us about availability of Love is the Gift, supporting children through bereavement, Joanna.
So availability on Amazon, you can get it in Australia, you can get it in USA, you can get it in Europe, UK, Canada. You can pretty much get it worldwide. And then you can obviously get it from my website if you're in the UK. I can send my book from the UK and sign it, but obviously postage is going to be a lot more.
Sure.
I think there'll be quality difference in the book as well. The ones that I have that you can get from the website are the best quality because I've printed them.
Yeah.
But you can literally get them absolutely anywhere because it really is about the content, and it's just meant to be there as a soothing resource to support adults to engage with children. It's difficult to have conversations sometimes. So sitting down with a child and being able to focus your attention onto another story or somebody else that it's happening to can give you space to talk about, well, how did Alana the mermaid deal with this? How is she feeling? Do you feel like that? Do you feel angry? And each page gives you the opportunity to kind of have that conversation. And I know that the story is about a grandmother passing away, and people think, well, maybe it's only good for grandparents, but actually the story is the story is there. The feelings are transferable to any situation.
I agree. Having read the book, I agree. And it opens the discussion. And sometimes I think maybe to discuss it, depending on the situation, might even be better that it's not quite as personal. Depending on the relationship, it could be a grandmother, but it could be just to be able to discuss it. I don't know if this is going to make sense, as opposed to it being directly about the person that died. It kind of gives that distance, that safety area where you're just not sobbing through.
Yeah, I think, sometimes it's easier, the people that like very clear language, because it's set in the sea, it's about a mermaid family, it's got a magical kind of theme to it, and it's supposed to be gentle and soft. So for any people that are looking for direct conversation about death, then you've got mermaids, then that's not the book for you. So, but it's not supposed to be like for like. All it is supposed to do is open a welcoming environment to be able to have that conversation. And yes, sometimes when you direct it at somewhere else and the conversation is about somebody else, it makes it a little bit easier to digest for the adult and for the child.
Yeah.
And I think with this is that the grandmother is dying in the story, and eventually she does die. And children do go through that. They do have family members that have cancer, that might survive with cancer for years, and slowly they see a decrease in their health and their ability to do things. So it gives you the opportunity to have those difficult conversations about what is actually going on. Why is there sadness? Why is there a change in atmosphere in the family house? What is going on? Rather than just pretending that nothing's happening and putting all those feelings into Pandora's box and going, right, I don't feel anything. That we feel.
Sure. And it's going to come out somewhere, somehow. And again, I love, Joanna, the ability to have it, as you say, the mermaid, so it's not and open for discussion. I mean, each page, when you are just very quickly, one spring morning, my mom came to me and started to teach me the cycle of the sea. Life has a sequence in all that it does, then it moves to the source, the one we call love. I mean, that's just so beautifully expressed, so beautifully written.
Thank you.
Thank you. You wrote it. Thank you, Joanna. You wrote it. And again, talking about how that we become droplets in the sea. Again, I'm not going to obviously read the book, but it opens for so much discussion. As I was thinking, and I don't have little ones, I don't have grandchildren, et cetera. But to think about that, I didn't even think about a book grieving for kids, and no excuses. Maybe it's because I don't have grandkids, don't have young kids, but this is what I think is so unique and beautiful about what you've done. It gives people the opportunity to have the discussion and let adults know that the kids are feeling, like you were saying earlier, they know something's up there. You certainly can't, I mean, depending on their age, of course, but you can't assume that you just say, oh, that's okay. That's okay. You want them to have the discussion. You want to know their feelings. I think you need to hear what they're thinking when during birth.
I mean, I believe so. I'm not going to tell people how they should parent their children because that's, each person has their way of doing things. I just say that I believe it's healthy to have those conversations and ask them how they're feeling and just explore, have that opportunity to have that conversation because like I said, you don't know when that time's going to happen when you can have that conversation. And sometimes we don't have a choice in how life gives us the cards of what happens. So I think it's profoundly important to have conversations, of course, age appropriate conversations with
Yes.
children that they can digest for the right age group, because I've had a lot of adults who have lost their parents at a young age as children. Lots of people said, I wish I had this book when I was a child. It would have made a massive difference, and the grief that so many adults who have lost their parents at a young age, there is there's so many different stages of grief that they go through because that, depending on how young they are, they go through their first day at school, parents not here maybe, then it's their first day at secondary school, or when a big life event, or if they get married and their parents are not here, or there's not somebody to be the best man or to walk me down the aisle, or all of those things are really significant points in people's lives that when they've lost somebody they love, that's when they think about them. This is when I would have needed them. When I'm going through this crisis in my life, I could really do with having that parent to talk to or having that person that I care about to talk to. So conversation, I think, is really important to be kind of had because the impact on grief, especially on children, it just doesn't get talked about. It's like, oh, they cope with it. It's like with adults, everybody's like, are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you in the impact of when somebody's died? And then all of a sudden, a year down the line, nobody's asking you anything. And they usually say people are impacted by year two, the worst, because everybody's still going off within their life and they've got maybe that real sense of that missing space in their life that cannot be replaced. You don't replace it. You have to learn how to live differently and to hopefully enjoy life again, but you don't replace the space that's missing.
Joanna, when you say that, it makes me think of a few songs. Grief Came Riding, Keep Me in Your Heart for a While, and a Tom Waits song with someone missing at the table. And in the States, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. We've all got Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever people are celebrating. And then there's the birthdays. And interesting because you always hear, well, the first birthday or the first holiday without them. That may be for some the toughest, but as you say, the second year, and when you have to really, and it takes a while to understand that they're, even for adults, that they're not coming back ever. Again, reference to when my dad, when I was I 39, and I driving home a couple of weeks later, I started to tear up. I started to cry, just didn't realize I was thinking about it. And I thought, what's wrong with me? It's been 2 weeks already. And then I thought, for 39 years, for better or worse, this man has been my life. How could I possibly think after 39 years and 2 weeks that I would be, I'm going to do air quotes, only you're going to say better or have dealt with it. And it's a process. Having lost a number of people, it's a process. It doesn't, there's no time frame, whatever. It could, and it may not be a holiday, it may not be a birthday, just that their absence can impact you. So for children, again, what your book does is open for the discussion for children. And I understand it's difficult. I understand the difficulties around certain holidays. I know that's how I feel about my dad, my mom, and others at certain holidays, but it doesn't negate the times in between those holidays or birthdays.
I think the thing is that you don't really have a choice when those moments hit you. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Exactly. Yeah.
everybody reacts differently to how they feel, and it can just be a song that you hear in a moment and it takes you somewhere. And it doesn't necessarily have to be take you to a sad place. It can take you to a happy memory and you can find yourself bursting into tears. I think the thing is that it's just about creating a space for adults and for children to just say it's okay. This is okay. You're allowed to feel that. It's okay. What you don't want is somebody to go, "Oh, I would have thought you'd been over it by now."
Yeah. Oh,
You know, that's the what you don't want to hear. Actually, no, maybe as you go through and you give yourself opportunities to cry or to grieve or to feel how you do, or you feel angry or resentment or whatever it is that you're going through, just give yourself permission to actually feel that and allow it to come out of your body rather than stay inside you. It's just how you feel, and it's certainly healthier to be able to
sure.
introduce that space. I mean, therapy is all about being there and supporting people and allowing that pain that they have to come out. And I do say to clients, sometimes this is going to get hard before it gets easier, because we are going to where you don't want to go. We are going where it hurts, but it's because it's so trapped inside there, it's got nowhere to go.
Joanna, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
We don't have a magic wand to change what had happened. You can't. If somebody's grown up in war, you cannot take them and say, forget it now, you're in a safe zone. Or, if you've had a bad experience, if you've had sexual abuse, whatever, you cannot take that away. That is part of what's happened. It's just about giving people the space to not have to hold what they have inside them, that have a safe place to be connected with other people. I say that love is the most important thing. There is no greater feeling than when you feel love for somebody. The feeling is, you cannot buy it. You cannot. It is priceless. And that is a magical moment. So if you stop and just take time to harness and enjoy that and be with that, whether it's with your children, with your friends, whoever it is, if you can have that, then it's great. And sometimes it's really difficult for people to go there because there's hurt,
Sure.
there's anger, there's there's stuff in between that gets all wrapped in. But having that, there is no greater experience than that. And it's scary for people. Some people are really scared of that feeling, because to feel it, you have to dare to lose it. We
Yeah.
when somebody we love passes away, when they're no longer with us and they die, it hurts because it means something to us. Think in Lord of the Rings, they say there's one little scene where one of the elves says to the other elf that's in love with a dwarf, and he says, it hurts because it's real.
You know, it hurts because it's real, very real. I've got a couple emails. Are you good for a few more minutes? I know
Sure.
I've already gone over the time that I told you.
Okay.
But it's such
Pleasure.
an important. Firstly, it's a joy talking with you, and I so enjoy what how you talk about love. This is really an important discussion, and some one of the emails is about gift, and this was on my list of things to talk about. How wonderful it is! They're talking about it briefly. I'm going to say about giving this. I agree. To a grandparent, to a parent, or to another family that you know is either or someone is dying, just to be able to, what a wonderful gift to give for someone, some other, grandparents or parents that have kids to help. Also, I've felt that it's good for the adult also to read this with the child, because it's going to bring up feelings in them that they may not have thought about directly. But again, it's a gift. You're a gift to all of us for writing it, and I know you're getting great response to the book Love is the Gift. And again, we're on in Children's Grief Awareness Week, and I know when you and I were scheduling, we really wanted to make sure it was sometime in this week, and I'm glad we're able to do it. What kind of response are you getting? You mentioned a few things.
I'm getting really good response. I mean, I'm getting good response from adults where actually the book means something to them. And that's also coming from adults that haven't lost parents or people, significant others, when they were a child. I think because everybody loses somebody eventually. We none of us go through that, don't go through it. We all do. We're all somehow experts at this because we all go through it. But it's been really positive, and I've had really nice feedback and really warm, heartfelt feedback. It's been really sweet to see the response of some children, actually the excitement of the book. And it's really interesting to see how okay children are talking about death and how comfortable they are talking about grief. I know somebody that was very reluctant to show the book to their child because they were worried that it would overwhelm them and make them feel sad. And to her surprise, her child felt really creative and poetic afterwards. And it had completely the opposite effect and just made her want to go off and write poetry. And I think that's really a lovely thing to hear, because that's what I want to encourage. What I believe is just to create healthy dialogue, not to take it away, because you can't take it away, but just to create a space for healthy dialogue, for it not to be so scary. It's a wonderful, it's wonderful to be able to live life without fear if you can. And people fear death. It's the biggest thing on the table that people are really frightened about. So to have the opportunity to not fear death and to feel okay to talk about it and to be able to grieve, is an opportunity. But it's difficult because everybody struggles with their thoughts and their feelings about death, and it takes time for adults to process how they feel. So I certainly recommend adults think about your feelings about death, process it, feel okay to talk about it. Not that I think there's that fear that if I talk about it, it's going to happen.
Oh.
I can guarantee you it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away from it. But actually, it's about having that conversation. Look, what if I do get sick, or if I die? How do you want a burial? Do you want to be cremated? It's having those conversations, about knowing that you feel that you've had clarity. You have people having arguments. Death always brings lots of arguments around and other people's thoughts and feelings, and I can understand that because everybody's charged with different emotions. But I think if we had clarity about talking about it, if we were talking about death the same way as we were talking about gratitude and being kind, then maybe it would be easier to deal with those feelings, not take them away. I'm not saying you can take the pain away, but in giving a bit of hope in a world which we have no control over. We don't have control.
And when you say that about like such as final wishes, again, referencing my parents, my dad had said to me shortly before he died that he wanted to be cremated. Never said anything to my mom. And tradition, they bury very quickly. And I had mentioned it to my mom, and it was, the day after he had died. I don't want to say she didn't want to hear it. She just negated it. That's not what we do, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt a sense of guilt that I didn't get and not anger, but my father should have had the discussion with my mother. They would never talk about that. He tells me so it doesn't. So all these years later, I think, and he wanted to be cremated again. I want to say not that it matters, but these discussions are so, as you're saying, so important to have. Obviously, before you die, because once you're dead,
you're not having the discussion then, it's too late. And that's the thing, is that everybody's waiting for tomorrow or somewhere down the line, or maybe when I'm good and ready. If you're never going to be good and ready to have these discussions. So if you have wishes, if you do want to discuss it, then it's having those conversations. And I hear it's difficult, but because you're confronted with something that you don't want to be confronted with, but eventually somebody's going to be confronted with it. So if you want to be cremated, then let everybody know that. Put it in writing. Be clear about it. Don't put it on just one person, and then all of a sudden there's nothing you can do because everybody else has a different idea, or the tradition or the religion has different objectives of how things are done. It makes it really difficult and painful as well, because you're left in a situation where you're stuck, aren't you? You're stuck in a disagreement of what two people, and one person's not here to have that voice. And we all have to be accountable, really. As much as your father might have told you, he also had to be accountable and say,
no, I agree. Yeah.
I should have, maybe said something to mum, and we should have had this conversation. And what's it going to be like if one of us is gone? Like, what does that look like? I give you my blessing to get married with somebody else, or I don't know. Whatever the conversation is, I want you to be happy. Or I know that in America you have a beautiful bird called a cardinal in some areas.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I know a lot of people, it's a gorgeous bird, and a lot of people show sort of thoughts and feelings of it being the spirit of a loved one, or a care, and butterflies as well. There's all these, you can have those conversations. Actually, if I'm not here and you see a butterfly, and if it ever comes into the room, that will be me.
And that's Joanna, that's lovely. The first time I had heard that, I was totally unaware about the thing with the cardinal, until a dear friend of mine died. Very dear friend of mine. I don't know, maybe five years ago or so. And I reached out to his mom and dad to talk with them, and I'll never forget his mom telling me about the cardinal. And she said that she was sitting outside, and the cardinal came to where her son would always sit. He'd go outside to smoke a cigarette in the morning. There was a cardinal in the chair that he would sit in. And it came back again and again. And now I think about it when I see a cardinal. I probably shouldn't say this again. I remember when a friend of mine's mom died, and had an experience about what I thought at the time. I know this is going to freak some people out. I thought I saw a squirrel turn into a cardinal. Now I know they're going to probably call send people from the hospital now to come pick me up and what we
Well, I
call
hope not.
pink slip me into the hospital. But it was, and I was at that point, I was walking to the cemetery where his mom was buried, and that's, the cardinal thing is really powerful
So,
with a lot of people.
yes, it is. And I'm going to ask you a question. How did that make you feel?
How did it make me feel when I saw that?
Yes,
Wonderful.
yes,
Oh,
wonderful.
it was absolutely wonderful because
So
I
there's
already learned about the cardinal, and my friend's mom, and I was close with her, also died earlier this year. So it was like, it was a wonderful feeling. Absolutely, Joanna.
So that there's great healing in having conversations sometimes about wonderful magical butterflies and cardinals, because it touches something inside us. Whatever you want to believe or whatever you feel or whatever it is, it's a real sense of connection. There's a connection there. And you know if you kind of look at Einstein and what he said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but either you look at the world as it's a miracle or it's not a miracle. And I choose to believe that it's a miracle, you know, just it's incredible just looking at what it is. So I think all of these things are really important and they're part of discussions and they make a difference and they help people internally to feel good and to feel connected. And we live in a wonderful world that is full of goodness and connection. We know how we feel when we feel love. It is an incredibly warm, wonderful experience. So when we talk about death, it doesn't have to draw on negative things. Yes, it is painful, and I'm
True.
not going to. I don't want to take away from the reality of things and how they unfold. But if you're having the conversation before anything happens, before you know anybody's sick, if you're having honest conversations, with your husband or your wife, you know, if something happened, what would you want? Or, having those open conversations, then there is a sense of openness. It's that clarity, isn't it? There's something about clarity of conversation. There's clarity between people. I think even sort of the Dalai Lama says that, if you live from your truest form, from yourself with honesty, you live life happily because you are clear about your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions. So if you say how you feel, at least you're living in your truth. You're not pretending, yes, I'm fine, actually, but I'm not. I'm trying to stiff up a lip, as the British will
Shut up.
do, stiff
Yeah.
up a lip and
Let's
carry
shut
on
up.
going, you know. But actually, you're not doing yourself any favors. Yes, you might be resilient for a certain amount of time, but where are you putting how you feel? If you are honest and true about how you feel, you move from that point, and you feel freer. You feel more content within yourself, not carrying the weight. The same way as it's lovely to share good news with people and joy and happiness. And actually, what you said to me, it made my day. Thank you so much. That's nice as well. It can be good stuff. We can share the good as well. It doesn't have to be just the no and the negative. We can share the good.
Good.
Actually, you being
Good.
here for me made a huge difference. And being available for people and keep saying to people when they lose somebody, can I do something for you? Do you want to? Don't stop just because they say no. They might not be there, but just them hearing you say that is just enough to feel connected with somebody, to feel that they haven't. So be within your internal self with people if you can do. It's a much healthier place to be in, and it's a much nicer way to live your life if you
It's such a
can.
beautiful message. And again, Joanna, when you're saying about you don't know what it might mean to someone else. You don't know something like you're saying, maybe small, or just reminding them here. I mean, for me, I know a couple of people that has family members that are ill, and I'm not in the close circle. I know them, and I will say, if you want to talk with someone outside of your circle, you may not want somebody that you see all the time. You may not want to share some things, or if you want to uh, cry or just be listened to or whatever, little things that might you may not think are big deals, but they are to someone else. Just a little bit of kindness. I know when you're saying that, Joanna, it's just for me, sometimes it's a small human interaction that I can even get teary about it. It's just a nice little connection that you make with somebody that you're never going to see, probably never going to see again, ever. But you had this connection, a kindness or something with each other. And maybe it didn't mean the same to them, but to me, it meant the world. Or if someone was nice when I was having some difficult thoughts or whatever, just a little reaching out with each other.
It makes a massive difference in
Yeah.
people's lives. Just a little bit of care, if you can just get that in check and just do something kind. It's nice when it happens to us. It's nice when we can give it, and the feeling that we have from it is nice. And I'd never underestimate how that's experienced, because most people really experience it really well. You can change a bad situation into a good situation once you bring it to a slightly more caring, loving space. Then it can change things round. I think that people underestimate the power of love. I think they kind of get sucked into thinking that this is a hippie thing and we can't love
Yeah.
or whatever, that we're all going to run around naked or whatever's going to happen. I don't know. But actually, it is so powerful. It's so powerful, and it's so healing, and it's such a nice place to be in life. It doesn't matter whether you are rich or poor, we all can suffer. And love is something for free.
Yeah.
We all have the opportunity to have it
And
or
just being
give
a
it.
little kinder to each other, a little more understanding. We were talking, everybody's got something going on, everybody. And just to be a little kinder, a little patient, whether you're at a grocer and checking out and you don't feel the person that was ringing you up wasn't as nice or smiley as you wanted them to be or hoped they would be. You don't know. They just might have, they might have had a pet rabbit that died. They might have a family member that had a diagnosis. You don't know. And we
You
need to
just don't know. You don't know what the other person is going through. And, if you can remind yourself, I know that everybody's human, everybody messes it up sometimes, everybody gets angry and loses their temper a little bit, but you can come back from that. You don't need to stay in that. You can try. And actually, the thing is that if you keep on reminding yourself and thinking, actually, that person's really angry and really grumpy, maybe there's a reason to that. Maybe they're stuck somewhere that's not really nice. So if I'm nice to them, maybe they'll change that. And it does happen sometimes.
sure
Grumpy
does.
people turn nice, and it's like, wow, you don't meet their anger with anger. You meet it with something different. And if you're lucky, it changes into something nice. And it's nice for everybody. I always say, anger fed with anger just creates more anger. Everybody's running around. It's like you have an argument with the bus driver. The bus driver then has an argument with the next passenger. And the next passenger goes off to work and starts being grumpy. And it has this chain effect that goes out. It's a ripple effect. Same thing is for kindness. It
Yeah.
has the same thing. Actually, can I help you across the street? You dropped this. Here you go. Your wallet fell on the floor. Those things also have a ripple effect. Oh, thank you. What can I do? You know what? Do something nice for somebody else. Or next time you're short of change and somebody's short of change and you have some change,
Do it.
return the favor to somebody else. Do that little act. It
And
makes a difference.
it makes such a difference. Since you said that, Joanna, I was at a grocer, and this was decades ago, and there was a guy that worked there that was bagging or whatever, and I was counting out my money. I should have thought more about it before. He came up and he said, "Can I help you? Do you need some money?" I've never forgotten it. Had the opportunity not too long ago to run into him Again, this is a couple of decades ago. He's still working at that. And I told him, he remembered, but obviously not as I did. He said it was no big deal. I said it was to me. It meant the world to me. I'm going to get emotional. It was just the fact that here was a stranger that offered his help. Again, was it a big deal? No, I certainly didn't need everything that I had rung up. I wasn't that short. I ended up working out okay. It was just that here was a stranger. It wasn't like a friend of mine was there and said, "Hey, Louis, do you know?" And I remembered it, and I had the fortunate experience to run into this guy and tell him how much it meant. And you hear that it was those people say, "Oh, it was no big deal," but it meant the world to me. It may not have been a big deal to you, but that kindness meant the world to me. And you are such a beautiful human. You are such a wonderful, Joanna. You are amazing. Talking about love, talking about grief so openly. Obviously, I love the book. Love is the gift, supporting children through bereavement. Joanna, can you just take a minute and talk a little bit about your website?
I think it's quite basic website, really.
Well,
It just gives you a brief explanation of me and the book. I think it's quite clear. Um, but I'm not a very techie person, I'm afraid. So
neither am I.
I
It's
just rustle.
lovely.
It's the information that's needed, really. A little bit about myself, a little bit about where my inspiration for writing the book came from, and then obviously the book's available on Amazon. So it's a very basic website, but I'm the kind of person that doesn't like too much fuss on a website because I
Yeah.
just want to get to what it says on the tin. If it says Marmite, I want Marmite.
Yay, Marmite. Yeah. No, we bonded over Marmite. The website, as you say, basic. I like basic too. I don't want to have to search for things if I can avoid it, but all the information is there.
All the information is there. You have some information on myself, you have information on the book and the inspiration. So it has all the basics. Obviously, you can follow me on social media as well, which you can follow me from the website. And I kind of dip little things about the books, little thoughts about grief, little quotes that I think inspiring or that can help people. So there's a little bit out on that as well. But yeah, pretty simple, I'm afraid. I'm not
It's
a
correct. Well, it's good though.
techie person.
But as you say, you like it. I like it that way also. Again, I don't want to have to search for things or wonder this. And sometimes when they're set up like that, they may be high tech, but I'll get, I'm going to say frustrated. It's like, you know what? I'll look for another time, or you get a little frustrated. You want the information there and you can't find it. I love that about your website. And your website is?
JoannaPA.com. I nearly forgot it there. I
Again,
felt like I was put on the spot. And the name.
very direct. Again,
I think I got
Joanna
it, yeah.
P.A. Moore, MOORE.com. Of course, we've got the links up. Go directly to the book. Gift the book, get the book, read the book. Again, it'll bring out, regardless of your age, bring out things. And we we're saying earlier, sometimes if they're a little not directly related to your age or your experience, again, mermaids, the sea, it's a good way to open your thoughts and certainly discussion. And I grateful, obviously, for doing the gig with you. The importance of this can't be overstated. It's a real gift. You are a real gift to and for our world. And having this, think about how much better it's going to be for kids to have that discussion. Shouldn't be ignored. Their feelings shouldn't be ignored. People wonder, how do I open up? This is how you open up. Love is the gift. Joanna, I hope you'll do the gig with me again, even though I've kept you way over the time.
It'd be my pleasure to do a gig with you
Really
again
an
at
honor.
some point. And I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Special day. I think it's tomorrow. Thanksgiving, is it
Tomorrow,
not?
yes,
And
yes,
as far as,
tomorrow.
because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving here, but I know that the
We've got
Americans in
Christmas
the
coming,
UK
right?
do. We have many
Oh,
happy celebrations of all sorts for everybody. May it be filled with happiness and love.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
World to
Thank
me. I'm
you.
so glad we connected.
I
I,
am too. Thank you so much for having me.
she is absolutely wonderful. And as I say, a gift to and for our world that